Let me say good evening to each and every one of you. Normally, we'd be starting at about this time. We will not be able to start officially, so we're going to unofficially start at 4:01 p.m. Because we do not have a quorum, we will not be able to vote on the minutes, and we do have 2 sets of minutes. Again, let me say welcome to you, to each of you. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to step out of bounds here just a little bit, Your Honor, if I could, just to say it is so good to see faces in this gallery, and they're smiling. Now, 1 or 2 of y'all look like you've been swimming in vinegar, so I need some folks to put some smiles on their face. It is so happy to see folks from Beaumont out attending this function. Good evening, Dr. Brown. Good to see you as well, sir. With that said, we're going to ask Ms. Wheelwright just to call the roll of the individuals that are here for the record, and once we get additional team members here and get a quorum, we'll then take respective votes.
I think we're at a quorum right now. I have a 7th member just added on Zoom.
Fantastic. That means we can officially start the meeting at 4:02 p.m. All right.
I'll do roll call if you're ready.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Mayor White,
Here.
Councilmember Lara,
Here.
Economic Development Manager Kyle Wardzinski,
Here.
Chairman Lawson,
Present.
Vice Chair Betty Rader is absent, but in her place, we have Miss Lynn Baldy. Member Ahmed stated he would be absent this afternoon. Member Beneke. Member Brown.
Here.
Member Glider. I see him on Zoom.
He's on mute.
There you go. Thank
There
you.
it is.
Member Coblin. Member Moran.
Here.
And Member Carl Vince. Okay. You're all
Thank
set.
you so much. And it is my official pleasure to welcome you, Mr. Glider, as a member of this body. I always take joy in being able to haze the new members just a little bit and tell you, sir, anything that we can do to make you feel more welcome in this process and a member of this body, you feel free just to ask us, all right? We'll be happy. And we look forward to seeing you in person so I can give you a good old firm Oklahoma handshake. And but it's a pleasure to have you here. Ms. Baldy, of course, is also glad to have you here sitting in for Ms. Rader. Ms. Baldy has agreed to do what Ms. Rader does, which is kick me under the table when I get out of line. And so she's sitting here close enough to me to keep me in order. We'll move forward if we could. We will take an action. Let's see. Are there any actions of request for excused absence other than Mr. Ahmed?
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, I am going to ask if I could, Councilman Laura, if you would, sir, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be honored, sir.
Thank you.
Place your right hand over your heart. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilman.
Yes, sir.
At this time, I'll ask Ms. Wheelwright, are there any adjustments to our standing agenda?
I have none.
And have we had any report of conflict of interest disclosure?
No reports.
All right. At this time, we will open up the floor for any public comments. Do we have anyone listed for public comment?
Yes, sir, I do have one. Mr. Tom Daniels?
Chair
Tom
recognizes
Daniels,
Mr. Daniels. Welcome, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, and I should say pleasure to be able to walk into City Hall and not stop at that one little window that's open, so, and actually an open door. So, your town hall meeting a couple weeks ago was very, very positive. You had, great attendance for that, and my takeaway from that meeting was that the city is willing to help anybody that has any problems with anything in the city, and don't hesitate to come and contact us. So I'm here today because thanks to whatever I thank it to, after the 2 years of crazy bugs in the air. I've had a lot of people wanting to rent my property. I have the Beaumont Town Center on 8th and Beaumont, not only the two-story building, but also the single-story building. And since November, I've had three new tenants and many other applicants for any little spaces that have been vacant for all these months. The problem that I would hope maybe we could redefine a little bit is that City Hall still is closed. I came in today to get an application for a city license, which is the problem that I've had with all my new tenants. They're handed this particular packet of 26 pages, of which for a tenant going into a building that is existing building with an existing use, basically no changes, I literally have to fill out 3/4 of this stuff. And I would hope that we could change that where we didn't have to say we don't need air quality permits. We don't need a 4-page industrial waste thing. If it's not a food service, we don't need the food service stuff. If we're not selling graffiti paint and stuff, you know, there is 14 pages of stuff that doesn't apply to the new tanning salon, the new phone store. It doesn't apply to some of my other tenants, such as an office building, a real estate office, counseling. We're pretty innocent when it comes to graffiti sales stuff and industrial waste. And I would sure like, one of the problems that we have is this form, which then you bring it back completely filled out with a check for $516 plus fees, which now total about over $800 to get a city license, which I'll leave that for my total comment on that. But no, not one of my tenants was able to fill this out. And so eventually I get involved, and I tell them that up front. I said, hey, there's a lot of it that I will do, because my plot plan's on file. I do the waste, the trash. I have the water. They don't have any water. They don't have any sewer. But it's impossible for that type of tenant to fill this out. And it's very frustrating for me to have to get involved to fill out all of these papers, which, quite frankly, when I draw a line through them and say, do not apply, and then write NA over all the other 4 pages, the whole thing gets rejected. That's not a good application, as we found. We need to put zeros in every blank, and we need to sign every page whether it applies or not. So that's why I'm here. I just wanted to make everybody aware that this is very frustrating for people trying to get a city business license and do business here in the city of Beaumont.
And I want to say thank you, Mr. Daniels, for that information. I will tell you, I'm not the expert in this. I would be happy to defer. I want to say thank you, Mr. Daniels. Please forgive me for not having the mic on. I am not the expert in those requirements, but I would be happy to defer to Mr. Warsinski or to our elected officials, perhaps, to provide some input. Certainly, I can understand exactly where you're coming from there and having to fill out documentation or forms, but and certainly I'm sure this could be something that we could bring up for discussion and maybe even make a recommendation to our elected officials for their consideration.
Well, I appreciate any help we could get, and I mean, it's a waste of city paper and everything else, but to have perhaps, now the lady asked me today, I mean, I wanted to see if it was still the same, and she just handed me this 26 pages, even though I said I'm in an existing building where there was retail clothing sales, and I want a new business application for a new tenant in that spot. And like I say, this is what I got, was the 26 pages. So if there was a separate application for people that aren't painting cars or putting hazardous waste in the sewers, because they don't have a sewer hookup, they don't have a water hookup. And they're certainly not selling spray paint or that type of stuff. So to make one simpler would be nice. And
Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
First of all, I want to make sure that everyone is, has everyone met Elizabeth Gibbs? Do we all know who she is?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
I was actually going to introduce myself, Chair. My name is Elizabeth Gibbs, and I know Mr. Daniels. Hi. I was appointed interim city manager Monday night by Beaumont City Council, and so I'll be joining you for most of these meetings as my schedule permits.
And this is her second
Congratulations,
time,
Ms. Gibbs.
this is her second time
My
around
second
as
go-around.
interim. So she helped us through the really troubled times of 2015, 16. But I wanted to say, Mr. Daniel, that this is exactly what we're trying to accomplish in that town hall meeting, is to get feedback like this. And we aren't supposed to discuss it with you since it's not an agenda item, but I think one of us will offer it as a future agenda item to streamline our business license process.
well, I know I'm not the only one that, and fortunately, only have a couple vacancies left right now, but I'm sure that, and I've heard from other landlords that they have, obviously they have the same 26 pages, and if it can be streamlined for everybody, I'm sure.
That's what we're going for, is to try to hear from you, because you may be the only one who's come here, but that doesn't mean you're the only one who's having this issue.
I've only had one tenant say, see you later, and went to, I believe went to Icsc and got a city license for like $75 over the counter, versus the time it takes to get this. Not only is it expensive and complicated, but then it's very time consuming too. And people want to get in business as soon as possible if they, obviously a lot of people are willing to do that these days. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Wheelwright, are there additional public comments that need to be made?
I have no written comments. Let me see if we have any. Olivia, do we have anyone on the line?
There are no callers on the line.
No other comments.
That said, and before we move away from that, I'll at least ask Mr. Warsinski or our elected officials that are here, are there any directives that we should carry away from this presentation or conversation that you want us to follow up on?
On the public comment?
Yes.
I don't know what I did, but I will try not to do that again. As the mayor alluded to, we can't speak on items or respond to public comments, but I have a feeling we'll discuss some of those items under topics for future agendas as we get down through it today.
Fantastic. We'll follow your directive on that. Thank you, sir. That said, and no additional public comments, we're going to move on to action items. The first of which is to approval of the minutes, and this time we have two sets of minutes to approve. Are we required, Ms. Wheelwright, to take these separately, or do we take them collectively? All
Yes,
right.
sir.
So I'll ask everyone to have reviewed the minutes from February the 9th, 2022, and also March the 9th of 2022, and we'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move to approve both minutes.
I'll second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we would approve the minutes as they stand. Ms. Wheelwright, would you please call the roll?
Mayor White,
Yes.
Mayor Lara,
Yes.
Interim City Manager Gibbs,
Yes.
ED Manager Kyle Warsinski,
Yes.
Chairman Lawson,
Yes.
and in place for Betty Rader is Lynn Baldy.
I wasn't here for either meeting, so I won't.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Glider,
You're muted, sir. Member Glider? There you are.
Yes.
Member Moran.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheelwright. It has been approved. At this time, we will move on to update projects from our city staff. I will defer to Mr. Warsinski and his team, please.
Thank you, Committee Chair, members of the committee. Before you tonight is a couple items on the major updates from city staff. One, I think we talked about this a couple different times over the last year or so, is that the city's redevelopment agency did own one property left. And the city got to the finish line successfully, was able to transfer that RDA property to the city for a future wastewater treatment plant expansion site. Very big undertaking. We do want to thank some of the agencies that are part of this committee, coincidentally, and the other taxing entities for allowing us to transfer this property for $0 from the RDA back to the city for a public purpose. So we thank you for that. The city has completed, about last month, we completed an update to that retail market analysis that was done prior when we first hired the retail coach. And we'll be bringing back those data sets, analytics, and so forth. And if you would like, Chair, we can actually compare the prior year's data sets so that we have some compare and contrast. So we'll go ahead and do a snapshot of both of them and then really showcase the new demographics only a year later. We also produced a full service restaurant demand report, and what we were doing with that is we were getting interest from different retail brokers on what type of restaurants we want to have here. And we also were getting a lot of interest on social media and through my office on the type of restaurants that people wanted us to bring here. So we had requested that the retail coach put together a restaurant demand report, which truly shows the dollars and cents that are being spent from the citizens in the community within different restaurant sectors to get an idea of if they're spending $5,000 at fine dining a year or if it's less than that. And then that way we can really program what our retail attraction campaign looks like for restaurants. So we have that report available. We also did one for automobile dealerships, because that's been something that historically has not worked out too well here in terms of trying to attract them here. But they are in certain types of areas potentially one of the highest and best uses from a revenue perspective if we were able to attract them here. So we asked the retail coach to go ahead and put together a car dealership survey in which it matches what we're spending on cars, the population, and so forth. So we have that report available, and we are using that in our attraction efforts for car dealers and so forth. One of the other items we have is going to be on item 3, so I'll go ahead and defer my update on the downtown business meeting to that item. And then lastly, staff is preparing for the International Conference of Shopping Centers, International Council of Shopping Centers, regional or national conference that's held in Las Vegas each year. And this one is going to be held next month in May, and it's May 22nd, 23rd, and essentially half of the 24th. So we're registered to go to that. We're preparing marketing materials in order to hand those out to different businesses that we meet at their booths, and our city's consultant is working feverishly to schedule meetings with city staff and possibly elected officials to meet with those retailers, those landowners, those brokers that are going to be there at that conference. So we're pretty excited about that. If all goes well, I may be able to bring some of the marketing periodicals and marketing items that we're going to be presenting at that conference to the Economic Development Committee next month before we leave for the conference, to give you a feel and the community a feel of kind of the package that we're bringing to that event. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warsinski, and absolutely, we would love to have a comparison on that updated report that you were talking about next time. That would be wonderful. That said, are there any questions, concerns, comments? Mayor?
What was the name of that convention?
So if you were to Google, it's just ICSC, but it's the International Council of Shopping Centers, but ICSC Recon Conference.
Okay, and if you get just, I think I'm familiar with that conference, but I'm not sure everyone else is as to what goes on in that conference. If you could just,
I'd be more than happy to. I probably should have done that. So thanks for the tee up on that. So the ICSC conference is a group of developers, so real estate developers, and they predominantly specialize in commercial, retail, office developments. And this conference is typically the highest populated, highest attended conference in that retail industry nationwide each year. So they utilize the Las Vegas Convention Center. If you've ever been to that convention center, or if you haven't, it is very, very large. And typically, both exhibition halls are completely filled with booths from various retailers. So you'll have the major developers there. You're going to have brokers there that are the middleman between the retailer and the landlord in terms of brokering deals. You will have each of the retailers there in some capacity. Some have booths, some are just there to attend the conference. And then you'll have government entities that may or may not have booths. I know that Mr. Moran from Riverside County is going to have a pretty nice booth because they typically do out there representing Riverside County economic development. And many years we participated with them. I know that Rob is going to be there. And then we're going to be there as well. But really what occurs at the conference is they have trainings and so forth, but the real meat of it is that we attempt to meet with the deal makers of certain types of businesses at that event. And they may be familiar with the city of Beaumont, they may be familiar with our demographics in residents, but having that one-on-one in-person conversation with them is where we get to ask them what's going on, if they're interested in the city, provide real-time feedback is imperative to our efforts in terms of retail attraction and recruitment. So hopefully that's a good summary of what occurs at that conference.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? I'd like to ask one just for my information, if I could. In attending this particular conference, is this related to the fine work that we're planning for our downtown corridor here, or are there additional shopping centers that we're planning in addition to what's down on First across from Walmart?
Very good question. So most of the opportunity site profiles that we're preparing for this go around are going to be for new shopping centers at, I believe, 4, maybe 5 different shopping centers. One exists, the other 4 don't exist. So we're trying to get tenants in tow so that a developer that purchases those lots can build a development. Right. But you mentioning the downtown concept makes me realize that because we don't have a project in place, it may be something where when I or other people from the city are perusing or walking through the different exhibition hall booths, if I find a developer who is showcasing expertise in downtown redevelopment or those types of projects, I'll probably end up stopping there, getting their card, possibly having a conversation with them and setting up follow-up meetings to see if they might be interested in looking at what the city has planned and understanding that vision. Because if they're at that conference and they're at that national level, they're likely not familiar with the downtown vision of the city, but they might be well interested in participating and investing in the community if they know more about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Gibbs.
I would just like to say that I would encourage at least 3 or 4 members of this committee or with Kyle to attend this conference. It's imperative that we get that face-to-face action with these types of individuals such as brokers and things like that. And I would offer to Mayor and Councilmember Lara that I would look at the budget to see if we could, possibly have the funds to send maybe 1 or 2 from the committee here and an elected official, and maybe Carrie and Kyle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. That makes sense. I'm going to defer to Mr. Warsinski to work with individuals on possible recommendations. Hey, look, if I had the time, madam, I'd go without cost, not because I like Vegas for any other reason other than the great eating and shopping. But, I mean, it would just be, I think, an educational opportunity to participate in something of that nature, of that magnitude. So thank you for that recommendation. I'm certain that Mayor White will work with Mr. Warsinski on some possible invitations. And I hope we do have one or two individuals that their schedule will permit them to be able to get away for a couple of days for that. That would be great. Are any other additional comments, concerns, any questions? Questions, comments, concerns over Mr. Warsinski's report? One more. Questions, comments, concerns over Mr. Warsinski's report? Hearing none, then we will move to item 3, continued discussion on downtown business and landowners to promote business growth and development in the Central Business District. Again, I will defer to Mr. Warsinski and his team.
Thank you, committee chair, members of the committee. So on March the 24th, it was a Thursday, the city participated. We were asked to come help out on a meeting with the downtown businesses, and the city assisted by really trying to get the businesses within the city and within that downtown area to know about the meeting, as well as to encourage their attendance. The city also presented the council's downtown vision, some of the designs and the allowable land uses and densities that we've gone over here, and that Christina's been nice enough to present to us. We also presented the parking concepts that the Economic Development Committee had discussed, and received feedback from various businesses at that event. It was fairly well attended, at least by my standards. Any given time, or at one point in time, I think I counted 75 or so individuals at that meeting, and that included roughly 10 city staff, including elected officials as well. So possibly 65 small businesses within the downtown area. The Chamber of Commerce was there. Pass Historical Society was there. So really good organizations chose to attend as well. And we received some pretty good feedback, and the mayor was gracious enough to do the question and answer. He handled it very well in terms of presenting options to the businesses on how to provide feedback to us, whether it's coming to Economic Development Committee meetings, calling my office on the phone, emailing, and he even offered to meet with them personally, or to have all the council members be contacted as it relates to businesses within the downtown, what challenges they are seeing, what they would like to see us do, and so forth. So I have a couple notes on some of the things that were brought up during that Q&A or response, and I can go over those, or Mayor, if you would like to add into kind of the summary of that event, I can kick it over to you as well.
No, I think you did a good job. It's just important that this was the first meeting, it's not the last. And I think there was a lot of momentum there. Mr. Patel, who I see in the back here, is doing his best to sort of develop a core of business owners to continue to move forward with what we did last month. So I think it'd be really good if we can find ways to encourage the next step and keep it moving forward.
Fantastic. Any other comments, questions regarding this report? Mr. Warsinski?
So just because I think it was important and it was a really good meeting, I think I'd like to bring the EDC and the members of the community that may be watching tonight or may watch this on demand on the city's YouTube, some of the information that was discussed at that meeting. So one of the items that came up was as we move forward through the downtown revitalization process, how is the city going to ensure that historically significant buildings are preserved? right? How can we do this in a tactful way in which we're encouraging multi-story buildings to be built and erected, but we don't want to lose some of the historical components that we have within the city. So that was definitely something that was good. We have contemplated that, but we don't necessarily have a formal plan in place on how to do that. So I envision the city working with the past historical society on identifying some of these critical historical buildings throughout the city and trying to figure out a way that both plans can coexist. In fact, the Historical Society has asked the city to present the downtown vision plan at one of their future meetings. So we've agreed to that, and we're just waiting to see which day and time we get to present at that. Some of the local antiquers is, I think that's a term, right? The antique stores within the downtown area were in attendance, and we were glad to have them. And they were wondering what might be done from a marketing perspective to really emphasize the fact that the Beaumont downtown used to be an antique cluster. You may consider it still an antique cluster, because I know we still have at least 4 or 5 within that downtown area, but possibly creating a marketing plan to encourage additional venues to come into the city if there's openings. So that was a good idea. Facade improvement incentives definitely came up. So they were saying, well, if I would like to improve my facade or my building frontage, is there something the city can do in order to help us do that? So that's an item that came up. The speed limits of 6th Street and Beaumont Avenue was a topic of discussion. Concept of shared parking or parking structures to be done within the downtown area, and to free up some of the parking regulations for what we call at City Hall on-site parking. So that was a topic. One item that came up, which I think was also important, was we were talking about the street designs and how to alter the streets to accommodate angled parking or parallel parking, traffic calming measures to slow down speeds. And some of the businesses were frank, and they said, Kyle, or I think they were talking to the mayor, they said, Mayor, this is a great idea, but how are we going to keep our businesses open while that construction is going on that street front? So I think just them bringing that up, it was positive that they were supportive of the idea, but their insight was that we need to be mindful that when we go through on these street improvement projects, that we need to do something, or whether it's additional marketing, whether it's advertising, to make sure that the residents know that these businesses are still open during that street construction. And there's examples from other cities that have gone through that successfully. There was a discuss on land use compatibility for certain criteria business types, which basically means they're seeing existing businesses that are operating within the downtown area that may not be permitted any longer under the current land use plan and the current zoning. So their questions are, how are we working with those? Are those something that can never come in again? Or are they going to be forced out? And the question, or the answer, is that they will not be forced out. We're not kicking any existing business out of their buildings now. But over time, if their business grows and they need to relocate somewhere else, then a certain type of business, maybe auto repair, could not go back into the downtown area just based on a compatibility or land use concept. And I think that's all the major notes I had from that meeting. I probably missed a couple, but at least that concludes my list for tonight. So I can open up to the group if you want to discuss any of those items specifically, or jump on to a different topic. Thank you.
Calling for any questions or comments regarding this topic from the committee. Any questions or comments? It's a very thorough report, by the way, incredibly thorough.
I always hate to be the only person talking, but I think we let the business owners know that we were going to start a discussion, I think, in this meeting regarding the parking and how we move forward with getting information from our business owners on things that we can do to make parking a little bit better for the community. I think I didn't see that on the agenda, but I think it can be covered under this item. I definitely don't have all the answers, but I didn't know if there were some people here who came to talk about that or speak to that. But I think we should have that discussion since it's something that we had said we would do at the town hall meeting.
Yes, sir. That was the next item. If there was no discussion on some of those others, was to jump to the parking.
Okay.
We
I'm
did
sorry.
invite we invited a couple businesses to the meeting to discuss that item. I don't know if they've, because they had reached out after the meeting and said, well, when's the meeting? I said, well, it's on April 13th at 4:00. If you want to come or Zoom in or call in, please do so. So I don't know if some of the members in the audience are wanting to speak on that, but we can definitely jump into some of the stuff or some of the items that we had heard at that meeting and propose different topics to address the parking in terms of different changes or alterations.
Hearing that invitation, do we have anyone who is a guest in the gallery that would like to offer some input regarding the issue of parking? You don't have to be shy, I promise you. The embarrassing seat is the one sitting right here, so you don't have to at all be shy. Well, hopefully, as you go out into our community, our home here, as you hear those concerns, that you'll ask our citizens who are business owners or even just stakeholders to bring those concerns to us. Certainly, the mayor has made it clear, as well as Mr. Warsinski and his team, that we are open to these types of discussions, and so we want to bring those to this body so that we can make appropriate recommendations to our elected officials. So you have a standing invitation that we can have these types of dialogues, and then, of course, carry your concerns to our officials. Okay. Any other comments, concerns about this particular topic? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Baldy, please.
At the meeting, you did talk about perhaps the town hall meeting, lowering expectations for some businesses that didn't need to have 20 parking spaces. And are you going to wait to do that until you come up with your whole entire plan, or do you think you can work with that between now and then? Because the plan, of course, is going to take a while to put together. So is it something that you're looking toward doing maybe in the next 6 or 8 months to do some kind of, I mean, depending on what kind of people are already trying to get in here and trying to have business?
Well, I think that it's something that we need to do in the next 2 or 3 meetings. And when I say meetings, I mean economic development as well as city council. So, just I'm brainstorming on how do we get started. And I think one way to get started would be to see what our neighbors are doing. And then to see, what opportunities we have, because the whole reason I'm trying to make this a primary issue this year is that I don't want to wait 8 to 10 years till we have the project. I think if we show the business community in Beaumont, as well as people looking to do business in Beaumont, that we are going to build that now. We're going to start doing things like the parking, like the facades, like dealing with different businesses as they come and go. I think we need to be doing it and talking about it now. So I would think it might be, I know I haven't been on this committee in a while. I've been there for a few days or a few meetings now. But I think it would be a good subcommittee is to have someone, just do a little research and look into what Ukaipa, what Banning, what, even as far as Redlands, what does Redlands do with their parking issues down in the downtown there? We don't have someone like Jack Dangerman who's going to come and build a parking structure here in Beaumont. But we should look at what we can do, and we should look at it now, I think. Absolutely.
Christina Taylor, Economic Development Director. I'm sorry, Community Development Director at the Economic Development meeting. Sorry about that. So subcommittee, great, staff's happy to support. But before you burden yourself with extra work, I think we already have some of that information that we can provide. So when we did the parking strategy study back a couple years ago, that SCAG funded the grant for us to participate in that. They surveyed a lot of the surrounding areas. They already had that information. So we already have some recommendations for parking requirement adjustments for uses within our city. So I can separate that out from the big report and send that to Kyle, and he can disperse it to you guys. And we have some other information on some of the more specific things, like with Redlands Downtown, they completely have waived all parking requirements. So, they don't have a minimum for their downtown area, but what they do have is the old mall across the street that has a lot of parking, and they do have quite a bit of street parking downtown and things like that. So they're able to have that type of standard where they can sort of make it a free-for-all or just do common area parking for their downtown businesses. I know Ucaipa has something a little different. I don't want to misrepresent them because I don't recall offhand exactly what they have, but every city has something, slightly different. So we can pull that as well and send it to Kyle for either the committee as a whole, or if you end up with a subcommittee, for the committee to review. What staff has been doing at this time with businesses that come into the downtown is, acknowledging that we can't require business to grow a parcel. So the parking that is on the lot is what it is. So if the use is permitted, we're accommodating that use and allowing it to go without penalty of, no, you can't go there because there's not enough parking, because we understand it's a hardship and we would much rather see filled buildings occupied with businesses than vacant buildings because there's not enough parking. That just doesn't make sense. We have the latitude to take direction from this committee and ultimately from council on any range of, from what Redlands has done with just abolishing all parking up to, making adjustments in the required parking amounts. We can do something temporarily. We can put a time frame on it. We really have the tools to do whatever is going to work best for the downtown businesses. So we're happy to support Kyle and this committee with whatever information we have or whatever process needs to happen ultimately through council.
So don't go anywhere. So some of the ideas that that I've talked with others about is there's a number of vacant lots along Beaumont Avenue and 6th Street as well that, I would like to see if there's ways that we can either partner with the landowner and develop those empty spots into parking lots. Or better yet, I prefer to see the city buy properties like that. And I think that kind of discussion needs to happen. I think everything's on the drawing board. Everything's possible. And, if the city were to buy a couple of the lots for parking for now, we could easily develop it into later. We can sell it to a business who wants to come in and develop it. And I think that would go a long ways to again, attract the kinds of businesses we're looking for, pedestrian type businesses.
And may I ask a question, Ms. Taylor, if I could, just as a point of clarification, because I don't want to say the wrong thing. We often know that, you'll have studies, you referred to the parking strategy study. We often know we have studies that are in the planning stages, and so they're not for general public consumption. The information that you're going to pull out from Mr. Warsinski, just in case someone were to ask us out in the community, will this be something that would be able to be shared with the general public if they had a question?
It's public. Is it on the website? Do we know? I don't think it is. Okay, we can put it on our website. It was presented at council. It's been several years, well, at least 2 years since it was presented. But we'll make sure it's up on the planning website and maybe get a link on the main, if if
And I just wanted
the
to
main
ask, just
page
as a
or whatever,
resource.
yeah, it can go through.
Yeah, just want to ask as a resource, didn't want to overstep any bounds, because sometimes, like I say, things are still in the planning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a complete study. It's done. It is available for public consumption. We're happy to share it with anybody. We'll get it up on the website. And then, you know, I've pulled snippets. I think last time I did a little PowerPoint here, but the whole presentation really gives some good information on what they looked at, how they looked at it, and both short-term and long-term opportunities for addressing parking, not just in the downtown, but even in other areas throughout the city.
Fantastic. And I do believe I saw this young man here to my far right, standing up, wanting to be recognized. Sir, please step to the podium and announce who you are so we'll know you. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, my name is AJ Patel.
Mr. Patel?
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is AJ Patel. Kind of new to Beaumont, kind of not. I was just here to give my 2 cents as far as parking goes. I think as far as the time frame for businesses to come in, I think instead of thinking about buying property or land to develop parking structures, because as an outsider looking in, what I see is we're a lot longer than, for example, Redlands would be. So if we do a parking structure here, then it's going to be a very long commute. Other ways to look into it is maybe businesses that are there that aren't open after 5 o'clock, maybe partner with them to use their parking lots temporarily. On the weekends, you know, in the evenings on the weekends when people are out and about, and that's when parking becomes basically hard to find. I know there's lots of lots on 6th Street where they have parking. Maybe the city can somehow partner with the businesses and say after 5 o'clock when you close, you know, if we're able to use that parking. Because I feel like the city funds that could be used for maybe a parking structure can actually be maybe used for facade improvements or even building, instead of a parking structure, some type of shopping center, more shops basically, that's gonna bring in revenue, because realistically, parking's not, but it needs it. We need it. A lot of businesses, I think, in that corridor may shy away because of the requirements at the moment. You may only have a 1,200 square foot building, but you require 24 spots, but it only seats 20, for example. I think looking at that, at least in the meantime, until things get moving, I feel like that might be a good idea. There's a lot on, I think it's 6 and Vale, if I'm not mistaken. That's empty lot that can be used for parking. Maybe it's been sitting empty that I've known for a very long time. I don't know who owns it or whatnot, but maybe trying to get in contact with them to see if realistically, we just got to throw some gravel down realistically, depending on what kind of businesses come in there. Because at the moment, the way it's set up is if we're trying to make it like Yucaipa, like Redlands and stuff, we want restaurants, we want, you know, bars, shopping, stuff like that. And a lot of that will require parking, because if I'm meeting you somewhere, you'll be in one car, I'll be in one car. And when we get there, it becomes an issue. But I think what we need to focus on is maybe getting those businesses in first. I think I mentioned last time too, we were talking about restaurants, maybe give an incentive. Like if you bring in, I'm just throwing it out there, Japanese restaurant, you'll have an incentive. If you bring in a different type of cuisine, a healthy restaurant, a salad bar, stuff like that. Because I know so many residents here that go to Redlands to a juice place or a salad place when it could be here. And those are places that you'd go and you're in and out in 20 minutes. The very high turnaround, basically. You're not spending 2 hours there. That's just my 2 cents on parking.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
If there's any questions, but.
Any questions, any comments to Mr. Patel's comments?
I just respond.
Yes, sir.
That is exactly why we need business owners in here, not
Absolutely.
computer developers to try and plan the parking for the city downtown. So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional comments, questions to the topic of parking? Mr. Warsinski.
So Chair and Mayor, if it's okay with you, I think what we can do is definitely get the parking study on the website and possibly a distilled version from the entire parking study down to the one that focused on the downtown area. Because we don't want to lose people in the discussion of Best Buy's parking lot and that parking study versus what we're trying to focus on here. And then work with Christina and her department on going through that parking study and putting together a list of the recommendations from that study, as well as the concepts that have been brought up by the landowners and business owners that we've heard. And we can go through those line item by line item at the next EDC meeting. And that way, instead of talking holistically about solving parking issues, we can present to you possible solutions for those issues, and we can go through and we can say, these ones seem to have merit, this one doesn't seem like it's going to work for us, this one we really like, and then that way we can really dive into those for discussion purposes.
And let me ask this in the, because we had talked about having the apprenticeship as a presentation last time, which I think is probably going to take a pretty good amount of time. Do we perhaps want to plan that for our June meeting?
Whatever you'd like. I'm good to have both at the next meeting. If we want to do the
can do it.
apprenticeship thing, I will make certain that I shorten up my update thing at the beginning.
Sounds like a plan.
And we'll have the apprenticeship thing, and then we can jump into the downtown and parking at the same meeting.
And I know that we don't need a vote on it, but I'd at least like to have some consensus from our committee. Does that sound all right to our members? That we also include parking on the next discussion? And that way, those business members and our citizens who are here can share that information with any constituents or any of your stakeholders in the community, that if they want to attend and have a discussion on parking, that it will take place in May, on, I want to say May the 13th, May the 11th. Oh, that date you gave it to us, May the 11th? Yes, May the 11th.
That is
So if you'll put that in your mental Rolodex, and know that we will have that discussion at length. Ms. Patel, I'm certain that you'll have an opportunity to share with individuals out in the community that if they'd like to be here to have some input, that would be wonderful. All right. Any additional comments or questions from Mr. Warsinski and his team on the topic of parking, or since Ms. Gibbs is here again, to our interim city manager?
I would just comment on since we're talking about
Dr. Brown,
parking.
please do.
At the chamber breakfast, that was a very good presentation. We heard a lot of positive comments of Mr. Wozinski's presentation on the revitalization. I think the one hot topic that I heard in the crowd about the parking was the center parking. It came up a little bit, and so that was, and I think that's one of the traffic mitigation slowing measures. So that came up. So I know that when we do have that discussion, that may be something that's brought up by some business owners.
When you slow traffic down, you can make them get hungry while we're sitting in traffic, and they'll stop by those restaurants along the way. I'm all for that.
Their comment was not really related to that specifically. It was more about issues on the 10 or the 60, and then traffic being diverted and getting off and Banning and coming down 6th Street, and it being so slow, and so that was really the crux of the comments. So, yeah.
I think we hit them when they come into the city limits with a little toll. Stop and get a little something to eat, and we can get you all through the city safely. You all will forgive that. You can strike that from the minutes. I'm always thinking of ways to make a little extra change, Mayor, without a doubt. Certainly, and as y'all can tell, probably food is always on my mind. That said, any additional comments? Thank you, Dr. Brown, for that. Any additional comments?
I do have a question.
Mr. Glider, please, sir.
Along with the parking, has anything in the past been discussed regarding lighting, like street lamps, more fancier street lamps to encourage the pedestrian activity?
Let me defer to Mr. Warsinski or Ms. Taylor on that. With regard to lighting, the question for Mr. Glider is there any, or has there been any consideration in addition to parking to lighting?
I know many years ago, we had some lighting upgrades done within the downtown area, maybe not on Beaumont Avenue or 6th Street. I believe the downtown plan has some ideas. Oftentimes they have ideas of what those lighting standards might look like. But beyond that vision and those development design guidelines per se, we don't have like a a city program where we're going to be installing those. We've not costed it. But it's definitely a good idea and something for us to look at. And as Mr. Glider talked about, it fairly imperative to if we were to create a successful pedestrian-friendly environment, that might be something we need to look at sooner than later in order to make it look better and function better.
Thank you.
Chair, I can add a little historical perspective. So many years ago, Kyle is correct, there was a change in the lighting along Beaumont Avenue. It was as part of the, at the time, the council adopted a dark sky ordinance. And so a lot of the street lights were, I don't think any of them were removed, but maybe turned off. But we went with the, those black pole street lights that you see out there. So those are about 20 years old, I would say, 18, 20 years old. But I would recommend as part of this project that we look at the lighting from the beginning, because it adds to the ambiance and the mood. And when you drive through places like Redlands, lighting is a huge part of why people want to be there. It adds to the aesthetics of the businesses. And I think it's important to business owners that we participate in that part as much as the parking. Because they don't have control over the outside lighting outside their initial storefront, if you will. So I definitely suggest that.
And I would say thank you, Mr. Glider, for that. I think I agree with you 100%, especially on a nice, cool evening and taking a walk out to have a meal, with the family. That would be great, absolutely. Any additional comments, questions with regard to the issue of parking and lighting? And then thank you for that, Mr. Glider, for bringing that topic up. Additional questions or comments to Mr. Wasinski's report on parking? Additional questions and comments? Hearing none at this time, we will then move on to topics for future agendas. I'll very quickly at least report that Mr. Wasinski has asked myself and Dr. Brown to bring presenters for the next meeting to discuss the apprenticeship program, so we can mark that one off very quickly. And I've got my fellow, and I know you've got a young lady that's going to be presenting, so we'll get that information to Mr. Wasinski, and that shall be done. As you review this list, and I've also had it included down here, Mr. Mayor, I had included parking down here since that had been the topic that came up. Are there any topics that you all would like to discuss from this list moving forward? Any topics, Councilman?
Let me just add to that list. A couple of meetings ago, or I believe it was last meeting, I brought up the C-PACE program. It's a commercial lending program that's done throughout California. It's handled by WRCOG. I was able to get a hold of Mr. Casey Daly, who handles that program. And if it's okay with the group, I have him scheduled to do a presentation for that on June 8th, the meeting of June 8th, if that's all right with everyone. He's free that day, and so I took advantage.
In a general consensus of head nod, so I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
That is C-PACE?
Yes.
One word or?
C.
Okay.
Space PACE.
And what is that in general? I know you mentioned it before, but.
It's similar to the only way to explain it is that it's a lending program similar to the HERO program, where you can take out low interest loans and pay them back on your taxes, I believe.
Okay.
It's just a way to get money and to generate business interest.
So they're business loans then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay.
Looking at this list again, thank you, Councilman. Are there any additional topics that we'd like to cover at future meetings? Additional topics to be covered? Mr. Wasinski?
Just because I promised Tom that we would talk about it before he left, that he did bring up the concept of the business application process. I guess we can leave it at that,
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
to go over that or not, but that's me just asking on his behalf.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot that. I definitely think we need to look at that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Additional topics for future discussion. Additional topics for future discussion. Hearing none at this time, we'll move on to reports from committee members. Do we have any reports from committee members? Ms. Baldy?
I forgot to bring my report. But the Beaumont Chamber is having, has a breakfast the second Friday of every month, which is extremely successful, one of the most successful breakfasts in our region. And our next breakfast, which is always the second Friday of every month, is Supervisor Hewitt will be giving a presentation and an update about Riverside County. And then we have it's not until June, but we're having a mega mixer at this ranch in Cherry Valley, which is an amazing place, but it's hosted by the gentleman that runs the ranch. So I apologize for not having the little thing. I thought I had it in my purse, but I don't. But the chamber's moving along. We are very fortunate that we are getting we had 8 new members last month. So we're just kind of on the move. So that's a good sign. So, and we get a lot of inquiries that come into the chamber or call the chamber and ask about the city and the schools and the town. So that is Betty's report. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Baldy. Any additional reports from members? Dr. Brown?
I just have one quick announcement. If you're driving on Brookside Avenue tomorrow, don't. We have the every 15 minutes presentation tomorrow where Beaumont PD, Highway Patrol, Riverside Sheriff's Department, medical professionals, they set up a drinking and driving staged event on Brookside Avenue, and it's a lesson for students on making good choices when they get behind the wheel. So Brookside Avenue will be closed off in the morning and will reopen, I believe, around 12:30 or so. So they'll be right in the right in between. I'm sorry, not Brookside. I thought I said Beaumont. Right in between Beaumont Avenue and the district office there. So there's no real cross street, but you won't be able to get through Brookside Avenue from Beaumont Avenue to Oak Valley. So.
Did you say what time that was?
It starts at 10. I know this sounds weird, but school systems, right? It starts at 10:10 and ends at 11:20, I think it is. So, and it's all about when the kids are released and giving them 15 minutes to get down there. And so our crew's been setting up bleachers and the whole scene for the accident to take place. So they'll be there early in the morning setting up the accident. It's a program. It's a 2-day program where it demonstrates. Thankfully, it's staged and it's not real, but it demonstrates students who would pass away in an accident and also get arrested. And then the following day, those students actually go away to a retreat to demonstrate that they're no longer with us. And then the following day, they conduct a mock funeral for the students, and so the kids kind of get a surreal feeling of what it's like to lose people based on making bad decisions behind the wheel. So.
Will the setup impact my dropping off my kid in the morning?
Yes,
It will.
it may. I think they. I think they'll be having it. It'll be closed down before drop off. So It just may take a little bit longer. They may. I think they may. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it yet because we have the construction on the north side of the high school. So that's a compounding issue because all the drop off and pickup. Well, not all, but a lot of it has been directed towards the south end. So you may just have to go to the north end and go through the drop-off line.
Good to know.
May take a little bit longer, but pickup will be good.
Okay.
And it's for a worthwhile cause.
Yes.
Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
they bring in the life flight helicopter, and they make it. It's very real looking. So.
Any additional reports coming from Mr. Warsinski?
I do have one. I just received news from Southern California Gas today that they have worked with PG&E and I believe it's Wells Fargo Bank to come out with a small restaurant grant in the amount of $3,000 per restaurant, and it is intended to help them hire or purchase equipment within their small restaurant. I do not know all the qualifications or criteria to be eligible, but I do know that you could be able to find that information and the application on Restaurant S Care, so restaurantscare.org/resilience. You can also give me a call or shoot me an email. I can forward you that information as well. If you'd like to share it with your friends, colleagues, neighbors, so forth, or any of the small restaurants that you know within the area. It opens on Friday. So it opens on Friday, and I believe the application period's for roughly a month or so. So I always tell people that, and the people I'm going to be talking to about it starting tomorrow, is don't wait to the last day to apply. Apply first, because sometimes they run out of money, and sometimes these programs are done on a first come by first served basis. So don't think the money's everlasting. Please, if you're interested in getting that free money for your restaurant, apply sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Additional reports from committee members? Additional reports from committee members? Hearing none at this time, we will move for adjournment. We'll entertain a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
And since we do not have to take a vote on this, I will say again, it is so good to see each of you, and more especially, it is so good to see citizens from our community joining us in this process and in this discussion. We welcome you back anytime. We want to see those smiling faces and hear your great ideas, so we can do the work that we've been charged by our mayor and by our council, and working with Mr. Warsinski's office. So thank you so much for coming out. Without stretching this out further, because you know this Oklahoma boy can talk for a while, we're going to call this meeting adjourned at 5:08 p.m. Please have a safe and wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't know.
All right.
Great to see you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah.